Hey, welcome back to Python MC. I'm your Python MC coach, Richard Ashe, and in this section we're going to get into for loops. For loops are super simple. With for loops, we're going to repeat the same set of instructions again and again a certain number of times. Think of jumping jacks. When someone tells you to do 5 jumping jacks, you do the same thing 5 times. You know exactly when you're going to stop. You're going to stop after 5. And you're going to just repeat the same set of instructions. So this is like, jumping jacks. It's going to repeat the same set of instructions a certain number of times. So let's get into it. In this example we have here, I'm just going into the code review for loop section of the Python MC exercise, and we'll see that we have a list of fruits. And what does a list of fruits mean? We have a variable called fruits. The value is a collection of values, so it's a bunch of different values. So it's not just fruits equals apples, like we had in the previous examples with the variables. In this case, it's a collection. It's a list in this case. We can tell it's a list because it has these square brackets. A square bracket right there, and a square bracket right there. So what's going to happen? Well, I'm using this tool called the Python Visualizer, so I can show you what happens in memory. In other words, what's happening in the code as it goes through each loop. And this will show you step by step, just by hitting this forward button right here, what happens. So the first step on line 2, it executes that line of code, and it says, well, it creates a variable called fruits, and it assigns it this list of values. So it's a list which includes apples, plums, and oranges. You'll notice that it starts at index 0, so the first item is at 0. There's some reasons why that happens, but just remember that when it comes to lists, the first item is the 0 item, and the second item is the first item. So you might get some errors in your code because you think that it starts at 1, when actually the first item in a list is 0. This is how Python works. So it's going to loop through this list. In other words, it's going to do the same set of instructions for each item. And the way it's going to do that, it's going to create this variable called fruit. And so you'll see down here, I create a variable called fruit, and then it says for fruit in fruits. And what that tells Python, it says, okay, so for each fruit, for each item in this list called fruits, I'm going to assign each item one by one to this new variable called fruit, and then I'm going to do something with it. In this case, I'm going to print fruit, which simply just prints this to a display. It just sends that item to a display. In this case, it takes the word apples and it just puts it on the display. And then it's going to go back to the top. So you notice this red arrow is pointing to what's going to happen next. This is the next item that's going to be executed in the code. So it did this instruction and then went back up to the top. Now normally Python goes top down. It would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In this case, it's looping on the same set of instructions because that's what we're telling it with. So you say for fruit and fruits, it's saying for is a key word to say I'm starting this for loop, and the next item is going to be a variable, and then I'm going to look for some sort of collection, in this case a list, and I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm going to go through this list and I'm going to do the same thing to each item. So the first time fruit equaled apples, the second time as I step forward, fruit now equals plums. So it's taken this variable and it's reassigned it to the next item in the list. And that's just going to print that to the screen. So it's going to display plums up here as the next step. And notice the red arrow goes back to the top of this list, and it's going to look at this next item. It's going to say, okay, I'm going to do this set of instructions again. I'm going to assign the variable fruit to the next item. I've already done apples and plums, and now I'm at the last line, which is oranges. So I'm going to step forward, and you see fruit now equals oranges. Okay, and it's going to do the same set of instructions. Print fruits. The red arrow points to the next set of instructions. And then there you see it, oranges right there. And then it's done this loop, so it's already finished. It's gone through each item in the list, so now it can go down to the next line. The next line of code is down here in line 6, which just says print, we are done. And you'll see it's the red arrow points to the next line, and now it says we are done. Now let me just show you what would happen if we didn't necessarily have this line number 6, if that was indented. So this will just show you how the loop is constructed. So we'll just show you real quickly. I'm going to go into full screen here. And if I didn't indent that line of code, so you'll see the same set of code here. If I did indent it rather, it would be part of the loop. So whatever is indented 4 spaces is repeated each time. So it says for fruit and fruits, print fruit, and then print we are done. But you'll notice over here it says we are done 3 times. We don't want that to happen. We just want it to say we are done once at the very end of the code. In this case, I took out the indent, so I just made it, I deleted the spaces in front of print, and now it'll only be run once. So whatever's indented after the line for fruit and fruits, it will be included in the code. Now, the key thing in here, and the thing you'll probably mess up, is the colon. Make sure you put these 2 dots, a colon, at the end of that line for fruit and fruits. So at that first line in your for loop, you need a colon. Otherwise, you'll get an error. And we'll show that in more detail later with breaking code. So have fun, get into it, and we'll see you again on Python MC.